Welcome in, everybody, to Fandom NFL. I'm your QB1, Joe Pizzapia, and get ready, everybody, because there's only one late-round QB. See, I am the QB1, but the late-round QB, the guy that's probably a much better value, is our guest today. It's JJ Zachariason from Late Round Fantasy, and, of course, you know him from just, I guess, a decade plus now, it feels like, of incredible fantasy football content. JJ, how do you keep it going after all these years, my friend?
It's crazy because I'm as the kids say, I'm unk now. After
Me
years
too.
of I mean, like when I first started doing all this stuff, I was like 24 years old.
Yeah,
I was young in the space, and now I got a family, and I'm getting closer to 40, and it's a pretty wild ride, man.
Yeah, so you got young kids, I got teenage kids. So
Yeah.
I'm in a whole different span of life, but we go back to the FanDuel days, you and I. See, people don't know these stories, baby.
I
People
know.
don't know some of the weirdness and stuff that we've gone through, and we're not going to give it up on this podcast today.
No.
That's not what we're about. Instead, we're going to talk about the must-haves for JJ because we had a great show with Justin Boone, and I love bringing on the best in the business and talk about their number ones, the guys that they don't want to leave drafts without, because I think that matters to the audiences. I think it matters for everybody preparing in fantasy drafts, and more to the point, too, I think whenever there's overlap of intelligent people who do this for a living for many, many years telling you the same thing, it's worth listening to. And guess what? There might be one overlap player here, and also some guys that I want JJ to sell me on. He's got a really interesting group of names here, so I can't wait to dive into it. Before we do, don't forget, like this video, hype this video, subscribe to the channel, do all those fun things, and you might win our latest giveaway when we get to 5,000 subscribers, the Marshall Faulk jersey. That's right. The Thurman Thomas thing did not work out. I got a refund on eBay, the whole thing. What a bunch of drama and nonsense. But that's okay. I put it out there to the people, JJ, and I said, which jersey do you guys want? This is what they chose. It's an excellent choice, and we get to 5,000. We're giving this away. The Zay Flowers jersey's already gone. So again, how do you win? Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell till it goes ding. Like this video, hype this video, and just comment below. It's simple. And don't forget, everybody, too, in terms of the tools to get ready for all your drafts, for all of your mock drafts, for all your in-season stuff, make sure it's rotowire.com. Go over to RotoWire, download the app, or again, rotowire.com is an easy way to get there. Use Joey P. That's the promo code. You get 20% off. I get a piece of that, and you keep this channel up and running. And I know you love the channel because I see how fast it's growing. So again, Joey P. That's easy to remember. 20% off of the tools that are really going to put you over the hump. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter if you're in one league or if you're in 10 leagues. You should use the tools because they really help you out there to manage all of them. JJ, how many leagues are you in this year?
Let's not. We don't need to talk about that. We don't need to talk about it.
Is it embarrassing? Is it
It's
over
embarrassing.
20?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I can't do that. I might
It's
get
over
15,
20.
I think, max now.
It's over 20, and then obviously best ball. I mean, I'm a best ball bro now, so I'm well over like 350 in the best ball streets.
You can be a best ball bro, and an unk. I didn't know you could be both of those.
Yeah, I'm all the above at this point.
God,
Yeah,
you're so versatile.
yeah. I mean, what can I say?
So we got to start here with a late round QB because that's the brand. That's what we always do back in the day. So I know the guy for you is Malik Willis, and you're not the only one. There's a lot of people that love the rushing upside of him. I'm sure people do have concerns regarding some of the potential for Malik Willis because, well, the offensive line isn't great and the wide receiver core is suspect at best. And it's a new head coach, a first-time head coach. There's a lot of negatives going out there, but also the raw data always tells us it doesn't have to look pretty. What he's got to give us is the rushing yards and certainly the rushing touchdowns. You see the projections here from RotoWire, 3,000 passing yards, 16 TDs, 10 picks, then 4 rushing touchdowns, 592. JJ, for me to really be a great return, he's got to obliterate that rushing number. Do you think he can do it?
Yeah, I think that he could potentially be prolific as a rusher. Now,
Wow.
you look at this ecosystem and what they have offensively. Probably, I mean, look, like we said, I've been doing this for probably 15 years now or around 15 years. And I don't think I've seen a wide receiver room as desperate as the Miami Dolphins room this year entering this season. And so I do have to be honest about that. Right. And they don't have like an elite, I don't mind Greg Dulcich as a dart throw, but they don't have this like elite tight end that they can rely on either. It's really Devon Achane as their sole, playmaker in that offense, as we know right now, right? Obviously Caleb Douglas or Chris Bell, one of them could break out. We'll see. I don't mind the offensive line. Actually, I think it could be decent, and they're going to lean on the run for sure. But the thing is, for me, this is more of a game theory thing than anything else. Why would you not draft Malik Willis, right? Like he's going past QB 20 in every draft. If you want to pair him with a more stable piece, feel free to do that. But in his 3 Green Bay starts, he averaged 58 rushing yards a game and a touchdown per game. That's 11.8 fantasy points per game via his legs. Now, if you look at the quarterback seasons dating back to 2011, where the quarterbacks had 7 or more points per game via rushing and then threw the ball 300 or more times in a season. So they were the starters for most of the season, and then they averaged 7 or more points per game via the ground. Of those 25 seasons, only 3 of the quarterbacks of those 25 ranked outside the top 10 in points per game. That's it. Only 3 of them. And Willis, obviously, and also they all ranked inside the top 20, and Willis goes outside the top 20. So at the very least, you're going to make some profit off drafting him. Not that a QB 18 is going to do that much for your fantasy team, but at the very least, he's going to give you some sort of floor based on what he can do with his legs. I think at the very least, what we're looking at with Willis is a Justin Fields type player from a fantasy perspective.
Okay.
And we've consistently said that we would be fine drafting Justin Fields as a low end QB1, high end QB2, because when Fields gives you, obviously he's giving you that rushing production, and then he throws for 2 touchdowns or has a 3 touchdown game, and he's an easy QB1. Like, that's what we see with these mobile quarterbacks. So I genuinely think that Malik Willis has an opportunity based on what we've seen so far in his limited sample in the NFL. We have no idea what kind of passer he is, right? But you're embracing that. That's why he's being drafted. If we knew that he was a good passer, he'd be QB9. You know, he wouldn't be going at QB21, QB22. And so to me, I'm willing to take that on and say, hey, what if he's just better than we think? Or what if the system's better than we think? And if it's not, all right, well, I either got a more secure player in the late rounds as well to pair with them, like a Jared Goff or something that you can just throw that dart at, or you can drop them and stream the position. And I have years of data showing that you can get low end QB1 production in most leagues via streaming. So to me, there's no risk in drafting Malik Willis. There's only reward.
Okay, so again, he's a free quarterback because we're talking about QB 21 right now in drafts. So in single quarterback leagues, you would take it. What's the ideal pairing for you if you were to take a Malik Willis, let's say with that last pick, because he's going to go undrafted in some single quarterback leagues? Who is the guy that you want to have on that roster along with him, just out of curiosity, that you say, okay, I've got this really, cheap floor? Is it a Jared Goff kind of guy? Is it, I'm trying to think, is Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield? Is it one of those kind of guys?
Yeah, look, like I genuinely think, I play fantasy football in a risk-taking way. I want to get first. I don't care about getting 6th place. I want to win. And so I'd be okay with even pairing him with Tyler Shuck and saying, all right, yeah, we're going to throw darts at these guys and hope that one of them hits. And maybe one of them doesn't, but there are worse things to worry about in fantasy football than if your problem's at quarterback, that's not the biggest deal in the world, right? But my answer to this is probably whoever is the last quarterback taken in that like QB9 to QB16, QB17 grouping, because there's a lot of guys that have low end QB1 into mid-range QB1 upside. Like Brock Purdy drops in a lot of leagues to like the QB15 area, and he's consistently, especially over the last couple of years, he's been running a lot more, consistently a mid-range QB1, so like a player like Purdy makes a lot of sense. Goff makes a lot of sense. I mean, this Detroit offense doesn't have a single implied team total. Looking at it right now, obviously before the season starts, of fewer than 24 points. They're the only team in football that hit that mark in every single game from a sportsbook perspective this season. They have a really easy schedule as well. So there's going to see a lot of favorable game strips. So I think Goff can be okay just from a touchdown scoring perspective. There's just a lot of guys that you can take a chance on that you should just feel fine about. Bo Nix is fine. If you want to like go with a safer approach. To me, I don't even think you need to do that. I think that you could realistically throw a couple of darts at a Shuck and a Malik Willis, have multiple guys in your roster. Shuck has a good week 1 matchup against Detroit, and then you just see what happens. You kind of go from there. And also, the other thing I didn't even mention is that Miami has a really easy early season schedule. And that's obviously, there's some variance to that. Yeah. There's some volatility to that kind of thing, but the matchups that he does have early season are pretty intriguing. So that's just, lends itself to you wanting him even more.
All right, let's flip the script a little bit on this conversation, because in Superflex, quarterback matters a lot.
Sure.
Would you be comfortable, because this happens a lot, like I just did the Flex League Superflex draft. I wasn't at the turn, but folks at the turn, as I would understand, those skill position players get sent down. You want to hammer those early on because it's very hard to pass on the ones that are there when you're at 10, 11, 12, because all the quarterbacks, the 5 or 6 quarterbacks that go early, usually in the first round, typically in those. Would you be willing to risk that all and go with the skill position players and really hammer those guys and then fall to a Love or Shuck or one of those guys with Willis, do you think that's enough in Superflex to get it done?
Yeah, and then I'd add a third and get like an Aaron Rodgers or something, right? Someone who like I think is going to likely keep his job all season and maybe not be an elite asset, but can at least fill in for you. Or you might be able to just get 3 later round guys and get a whoever falls in that range. What maybe it is Jordan Love,
Daniel Jones
and then
seems to be the
sure
guy.
Daniel Jones is fine. Yeah,
he keeps
yeah,
like floating around as like my third quarterback in multiple Superflex leagues.
yeah.
And I don't understand why, because I feel like that you shouldn't let me do that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
because I feel like that's such a bonus, because not only if he plays well do I have the guy to cover buys, but also he becomes such a trade chip for the inevitable quarterback injury that happens to another team.
yeah, I mean, with dimes, it really comes down to how that Achilles heals, right? And if things are good there. But if it does, yeah, I mean, like there's rushing upside. He could easily be a solid like high end QB2, maybe even low end QB1 if things hit. So yeah, I mean, like there's so many quarterbacks out there that if you do get Willis, I think that you should probably have a trio of guys in Superflex. But I have no problem getting Willis in a Superflex format.
All right. Last night we started the CBS Charity League for St. Jude's. I have one of the leagues. I believe you have one as well. So we're underway. You'd be so proud of me, you and Justin Boone, because my first selection there at, I believe I was 10, was the next guy we're going to talk about. So let's talk about Chase Brown. Now, last year, obviously, 1,000 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. He had 437 receiving, another 5 touchdowns. This year, the projections are similar. But there's 2 trains of thought here. And this is the last conversation I had with Justin regarding him. There's some people that say, well, Joe Burrow's back, offense opens up, things change. I'm more of the mind where Justin is, and it seems like you are too, where Joe Burrow coming back doesn't hurt Chase Brown. In fact, it helps him. Time of possession goes up, scoring opportunities go up, length of drive goes up, all that stuff happens. And what you want is more opportunities from Joe Burrow putting points on the board, because it helps Chase Brown. So why is Brown a guy for you that you don't want to leave drafts without?
Look, the first 6 games last year when you had like Browning under center and it was just chaos with that Bengals offense, he averaged 9.7 PPR points per game. And I think a lot of people have this anchoring bias going on with Brown because they drafted him. He ruined them the first month and a half of the season. And then I'm sure he gave them some pretty good production later in the season, but there wasn't as much confidence to start him. And so he burned them last year, right? A lot of fantasy managers. But during that stretch in the first 6 games, he still had a 78% running back rush share and a 13% target share. Those are 2 very, very strong bell cow type numbers. After those games, he averaged 20.4 PPR points per game. And in games with Joe Burrow last year, he was at 21 PPR points per game behind only Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's it. Those 4 guys. Some might say that this is because, Samaje Perine missed some time. And that's why, Chase Brown had this healthy 14% target share with Joe Burrow last year. But really in the end, like I think that's showing us that the ceiling is pretty phenomenal with Chase Brown. And the other thing that I think is going a little bit overlooked here is that Cincinnati's offensive line looks better on paper and deeper on paper than it has almost any other year that we've seen with Joe Burrow. So Brandon Thorne, who does a lot of work for Establish the Run, he wrote, and I had no idea that this was the case until I saw him put it together, but he does a lot of offensive line work. This is the first year of Joe Burrow's career that he has the same offensive line year in and year out. So year over year. And so I look at these like running backs that are going in that 1-2 turn area, and he's the one player where there aren't question marks as to how this offense really operates. The coaching staff didn't change. The offensive system isn't going to change. The personnel didn't really change. Whereas you go down the list, Saquon Barkley, completely new offensive coordinator and offensive system. You just and like
every year Jalen Hurts gets a new offensive coordinator.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
Crazy.
And but like you just go down that list. Kenneth Walker's on a new team. And I like both those guys a lot. They're in the same tier as Chase Brown for me. But like Devon Achane, what's that going to look like in the Miami offense? Derrick Henry has a brand new offensive coordinator and system. Like we don't know exactly what this is going to look like for a lot of those running backs, but we do with Chase Brown. It's a pretty stable environment, and it's an environment where, he looks good. We have a metric called market score that we developed this offseason where it looks at a player's ADP and then it looks at previous season inputs and it tries to be more predictive than what ADP is being for us right now, right? So it's called market score because it's using ADP to sort of rank players for this 2026 season. I use market score to find historical comps, right? So I can look at a player's ADP. I can look at where he's being drafted within his position, his overall ADP, his career year, and then his market score, and find historical comps for that player. Two of the biggest market score comps for, like, the closest comps for Chase Brown are 2014 DeMarco Murray and 2016 Le'Veon Bell, who scored 22 and 21.2 PPR points per game. So
that version of Le'Veon Bell,
yeah, it was
if
elite.
Chase Brown turns into him, that is spectacular potential.
Right. So there's just a lot to like about Chase Brown from a stability standpoint, an offensive environment standpoint. Just an easy click for me.
You know what's funny too? The thing that you mentioned, I think, is really important that gets glossed over, is not just the health of the offensive line, the talent of the offensive line, but the continuity.
Right.
I don't think there's enough people, especially in the casual fantasy football space, that understand just how important it is for a line to play together for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the lines that have continuity year over year, I think of those, great Cowboys teams of the 90s. I think of some of the great offensive lines that, like, I remember back in my childhood too, like the Redskins and the Hogs, and like, because I'm the OG unk here. You're still just youngin' to me. You're the fun uncle. I'm the old angry one that yells at the clouds. But the idea of those offensive lines that stay together annually, year over year, they created such a wall, and the trust with each other and the timing with each other. It's so important. I'm going to test you.
Okay.
Right? You ready? I think you're going to do better than Boone. Boone needed a little help. He did pretty well. He needed one clue. There were 4 guys. Don't look. Don't pump my stats. All right. No phones. This is like trivia night at the bar.
I'm probably going to get 0.
Here we go. No, I don't think you will. You're a smart guy. You wear the glasses, at least gives the illusion of smart.
Yeah.
So 4 guys last year had more receptions at the running back position than Chase Brown. Can you name them?
CMC.
Mm-hmm.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Bijan.
There's one more. This is the one that Boone needed a hint on.
Hang on.
This is fun to watch.
I'm gonna go. It's a random guy. Yeah.
I would say random. Pretty much.
Is it Kenneth Gainwell?
It is Kenneth Gainwell.
Boom! All right.
There you go. Right. There you go. See,
right.
I knew you'd do it. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it when, like, the data guys have a second of not being sure about something. It warms the cockles of my heart. I love it. But you nailed it. And you got it faster without a hint. So take that, Justin Boone.
Yeah,
there you go.
Eat it, Boone.
This and send it to you. Eat it, Boone. All right. It was so great to hang out with all of you, by the way, in person.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's such a good weekend at the Expo. Go to the Expo. If you love fantasy football, check
it out.
Good time. It's a really fun event. All right. Let's move on to some of the wide receivers, because I know in particular this guy is becoming a fantasy darling. I was a little skeptical. I was such a supporter of his when he came into the league. I was a drafter of him everywhere when he was a rookie. I looked like a genius. Then things got a little muddy, some injuries, some issues going on there. But now a fresh start in Denver for Jalen Waddle. And I want to talk about this because the projections aren't mind-boggling. They seem right to me. 84 receptions, 1070, 6 touchdowns. That feels about right. I think Bo Nix doesn't get enough credit, especially after a sophomore season, dealing with the things that one deals with. And I was always a tough grader on Bo Nix. I watched him enough at Auburn to question whether or not he was ever going to get to the NFL. And he has been pleasantly surprising. I watched the preseason game. I watched Waddle working in, and I got to say, it looked good to me. It looked really crisp. It looked really natural. The Broncos, I believe, was where I'm going to settle for my AFC representative from the Super Bowl. That's where I think I'm going to land. Jalen Waddle is a very trendy pick right now. So, on trend, how good could he be and how aggressive should people be on him? Because he's not being drafted as a wide receiver 1.
No.
But what's his upside, in your opinion, in the situation he is with a defense that's quite this good and a team that doesn't have to air it out all the time?
I mean, I think that he can finish as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Like, it's definitely in his range of outcomes. He's always been excellent on a per route run basis. He was at 2.19 last year, yards per route run, 24% targets per route run, 11.5% first downs per route run. That was the second best number of his career. I mean, he had a really good per route run season. Year 6 is usually a peak performance year for wide receivers as well. And that's where he's entering this year. Denver, yes, they've had, good defensive play, but they've been 12th in the NFL in touchdowns per game over the last 2 years with Bo Nix. They've been 5th in attempts per game. So they are still throwing the ball a decent bit in Denver. And then over the same time frame, you've had Miami at 24th in touchdowns per game, 21st in attempts per game. Here's the other thing that's really interesting to me is that Jalen Waddle has played 2 seasons where his offense has had a positive EPA per play, which, just an above average offense, right? in those 2 seasons, he had yards per route run rates of 2.59 and 2.63, which are legitimately like peak Justin Jefferson type numbers from a per route run basis. Now, obviously, his target share didn't reach the 28-29% range like we see with a guy like Justin Jefferson, but he was also playing alongside Tyreek Hill. And I look at what Denver has right now on offense. Cortland Sutton's on the wrong side of the age curve, and he's pretty much just like this X receiver that's going to stay in that spot and play that role. Pat Bryant is rising and ascending, seemingly out of camp, like had a good camp and such, but he's more going to start out in the slot. But I think that Pat Bryant's presence could end up being helpful for Waddle and getting him both inside out a little bit more. And here's the other thing too, is that this Denver offense last year, you might remember, there was a stretch where Troy Franklin was getting like eight plus targets per game. Like there was like a 5-6 week stretch where people were literally saying, oh, Troy Franklin's better than Cortland Sutton. Like that was the narrative that was out there. And it was not wrong from a fantasy perspective. But what was really going on is that this Denver offense was using Troy Franklin in the Z role in that offense. They were moving him around. And that's one where you can manufacture some touches for these guys. That's the role that Jalen Waddle is going to play. Imagine Troy Franklin able to get 8+ targets per game and then throwing Jalen Waddle in that role, going from Troy Franklin to Jalen Waddle. There's just so much upside. There's so much intrigue. So I'm in on Waddle. I think that he fits this offense really well. I'm not worried about the competition. Sutton's fine, but he's certainly not as big. Like I've been railing against Sutton on like every show I do, just because he's like the definition of a single, not a home run in the middle rounds, right? Like it's just not the kind of player that I'm really that interested in. And his targets per route run, last year in a bad offense or in an offense with not great competition at wide receiver was sub 20%, which is not very strong at all. And so I think that Sutton's just not a huge target earner for me to worry enough about what Jalen Waddle can do.
It's interesting that you mentioned Pat Bryant there too, because we had Laquan on a couple weeks ago and he was mentioning him as some of the late round gems. We were talking about those guys. So interesting that you kind of brought him to light also. I want to get exactly where you're at with Waddle too, because right now Jalen Waddle typically is, looking at the consensus ADP on RotoWire, he is about the 20th wide receiver off the board. Yep. Here are the names around him. Would you take Jalen Waddle over Ladd McConkey in the Mike McDaniel offense? Again, ironic question here because one's leaving the Mike McDaniel offense, one's getting the Mike McDaniel offense. So how do you feel about McConkey versus Waddle?
Yeah, so I have a giant tier of wideouts, but I have Waddle above McConkey. Yes.
Okay, so Waddle. What about Egbuka? Because that's another controversial one.
Have him one spot ahead of Ibuka because I'm just using the toe as sort of the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and I can understand that. All right, one more I'm going to throw at you. Which I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it anyway because they're back-to-back in ADP. DJ Moore with Josh Allen or
Waddle? Jalen Waddle for me. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know that sometimes people will look at it and say, well, DJ Moore, maybe a little less target competition. I also feel like Waddle fits the low ADOT historic Knicks too.
Yes.
And that's the one simplest point that I feel like every single person and analyst who talks about Waddle doesn't mention to me. And it just kind of popped in my head too of like, if you're going to like Waddle, you got to like the fact that Bo Nix kind of feels like a Waddle relationship is perfect for him.
That's what I mean. Like they're going to do things to get Waddle the ball in a lot of different ways. And that plays into that idea. I think that there's a lot of like analysis in the fantasy space right now where people are doing really good work on like who's the better wide receiver and stuff like that. But I think that there are times where we're not layering on top like what matters in fantasy football, right? Like we could be totally wrong about Jalen Waddle. We could be totally wrong about a lot of these places, but these spots. But like Rome Odunze versus Luther Burden, for instance, right? That's a big point of debate for people right now, drafting Odunze or Burden. And Odunze might be a better wide receiver than Luther Burden, but I'm on the Burden side because I think that he can scam fantasy football at a better rate than Rome Odunze can, right?
So
like
Chase Doscos, who was on the show Inside the Numbers last week, we did that same comparison, and his point for Burden was Burden is the guy that succeeds more versus zone coverage as opposed to Odunze, who wins on man.
Right.
Now, when you're talking about where the NFL is right now, the NFL is a zone coverage league. It was up 10% year over year, right? So typically, like, it's just, like you said, gaming the system a little bit. Burden seems to be the guy that's gaming the system. So I think all that stuff, the context matters, I think, more than people realize, some of those things. And I think what the quarterback does matters too. And I think sometimes we want to get so excited about certain wide receivers, but we should lean a little bit on what are the strengths of the quarterback and the weaknesses of the quarterback. Yeah. And Bo Nix is not a guy who's throwing, 60 yards down the field. Like that's not his MO. He's not Justin Herbert, not the same arm. It just does not happen. All right. Another wide receiver I want to talk about, different side of the scale, a guy who is past 30, but he's cheaper than some of the other 30-year-old guys. He's recently signed with the Washington Commanders, which again, he can thank Brandon Ayuk, I think, for that contract. That's I say. I mean, all the social media presence of Brandon Ayuk brought you Stefon Diggs to the Commanders. Last year, terrific bounce back season, coming off the knee injury. A lot of people were doubting him. He was productive when he played for the Texans too in that short spurt. I think people forget that before the injury. He was solid there. Solid with the Pats last year. 85 catches for 1,013. He only had 4 touchdowns. That's kind of the sad part about Stefon Diggs. We don't look at him as a guy scoring touchdowns. Now, in this offense with the Commanders, the RotoWire projections have him at 71 receptions, 737. Again, just 4 touchdowns. So, why is Stefon Diggs appealing to you here in year 3 of Jaden Daniels? And what are we at now? Year 32 years of age for Stefon Diggs, entering 33?
So, question, where does ADP have Stefon Diggs right now? Just to give you an idea of where.
I will answer that question for you so astutely. He is the 44th wide receiver player, 119 overall.
So the reason I'm calling him out is because I have him 10 wide receiver spots ahead of that. So I'm much above market with Stefon Diggs, and here's why.
So Stefon Diggs goes from the consensus, just for everybody out there, Josh Downs, Jacoby Myers, Jordan Tyson, Michael Pittman. In your range, we're talking closer to Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, DK Metcalf.
Exactly. So I have him above Metcalf, above Wilson, 1 spot below Marvin Harrison Jr. Like that's where I'm at with Diggs. So the reason for that, okay. Last year he averaged 12.3 PPR points per game, which ended up being fine at cost, like where you drafted him, right? He wasn't a league winner, but he didn't sink you. With that being said, among wideouts with 100 or more routes last year, he was top 10 in yards per route run. He saw a 90th percentile targets per route run rate. The problem was that he just didn't get a high route share. His route share was 71%, which aligned close to like Troy Franklin and Sterling Shepard. So he was like, closer to like 60th in route share, but he was unbelievably efficient per route run. He can play inside and out. He was actually good on the outside last year. This is not just like, he was a slot merchant, and that's the only reason why he was getting any production. He was 9th in targets per route run outside the slot last year. He was 8th in yards per route run outside the slot. He was coming off an ACL injury, and that's largely and likely the reason, or part of the reason, that he wasn't running as many routes as we would want him to run. You look at the Washington team right now, and immediately you can see how he meshes and works really well with Terry. Terry McLaurin's always been a perimeter down the field type player, right? Like he's never been a high target share getter. And McLaurin actually, I think, is a good pick too, because he's coming off.
I love Terry McLaurin.
He's coming off he's coming off his best per route run season of his career. Oddly, like there's no
down overall season because of
because
to me it was so simple. Like every single day, every single hour that went by of that holdout, I got less and less enthusiastic about drafting him because I was like, well, the inevitability is a soft tissue injury, and we're going to lose him. And then, sure enough, there we go.
Right.
But before that, leading up to it, I made a ton of money the year before investing in the over because I think Terry McLaurin was somewhere like 100.5 yards. And I was like, that's just hilarious because he always gets 1,000 every year. And every year he does. And I just think this year we go right back to it.
Yeah, I mean, you get a healthy Jaden Daniels. I'm really optimistic about David Blau and what he could do to the offense. I mean, the Cliff Kingsbury offense just got stale so quickly. I mean, they ran out of shotgun at an 89% rate over the last 2 years. That was 7 percentage points higher than any other team in football. I mean, they didn't use a lot of motion. They were bottom 5 in motion over the last couple of years. I mean, it's just a really stale offense. And Blau, seemingly, we have no idea, obviously, but is seemingly going to do the things that we want offenses to do for fantasy purposes, which is a little bit more under center to help with play action, to get guys in motion and create those mismatches. And so when you look at Stefon Diggs and Terry McLaurin, Diggs is an inside out player and he will play inside out. But I think there's a very real chance, even if, I think that we'll see some reports and we might not even see Diggs out there outside of 11 personnel. Maybe he's not out there in 12 personnel, but I'm leaning in on the fact that there is no evidence that Stefon Diggs is just total dust. There's just none. Like he's been great on a per route run basis. Even a couple of years ago, as you noted, before he went down with the injury with Houston, like he was still a productive wide receiver and getting a lot of looks. And this goes back to the conversation we just had about the stuff we care about in fantasy football and what is going to score points. He's going to be more of the underneath option in that offense, period. And so if he plays slot, he plays more of the Z. Terry McLaurin's in the X. I think they pair very well together. There's not that much else outside of those players. So I'm high on Diggs. I think that there's a lot of upside. I think both of them can finish as wide receiver 2s in fantasy or better this year. Like genuinely, because there's not, when you look at how targets are distributed in this offense, They have no wide receiver 3 that we feel super confident about right now. Chigakonkwo, I think, is fine as like a dart throw tight end. And even the running backs were like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt hasn't been traditionally much of a pass catcher. Obviously, Rashad White has, but it's not like we're sitting with a 22% target share Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. You know what I mean?
No,
So I just, there's just a lot of volume that could go Diggs' way, and it's surprising to me that people aren't leaning into it more given his peripherals last year.
Speaking of late tight ends, as you're saying, throwing darts on somebody, you got a guy here that we haven't talked about all season on this program. So I'm excited to hear Terence Ferguson of the Los Angeles Rams, 23 years old. Last year didn't bring too much to the table, but this year you've got some, it's like almost double some of the stats in terms of receptions, in terms of target volume potentially. So talk to me about Ferguson. Why is he all of a sudden somebody that you have on your radar that you want to pilfer late in drafts?
Yeah, look, I thought he was a great prospect. So like it's definitely playing some role there. Like he came out super athletic. There's this big push towards 12, 13 personnel in the NFL. And a lot of teams are doing that as just, it's a copycat league. And we see all these tight ends get drafted early in the NFL draft this past year. And to me, not all of these teams are thinking clearly with why 12 personnel can work and why 13 personnel can work. To me, what the Rams did last year is why 12 and 13 personnel can work. What the Rams do is that they have, now they have like 5 reasonable tight ends on that roster that they can use. They just drafted Max Clare as well. But what the Rams do is that they will go out and pre-snap, they'll be in 13 personnel. And then they'll shift out of that. And then all of a sudden their tight ends move to the outside more and they're in 11 all of a sudden. Right. And Terence Ferguson is all of a sudden playing the X, right? The benefit of a player like Terence Ferguson, who's more of like a tweener Darren Waller type player, is the fact that you can move him all over the formation. And if you look at the Rams right now, they only have 2 weapons on offense through the air. And it's an offense that traditionally has not targeted the running back at all under Sean McVay. I think they're 7 straight years now as a bottom 3 running back target share team. And so it's an offense that will get the ball to their wide receivers and tight ends. And if we're looking at their wide receivers, they have no slot guy. And so I do research for the draft guide every year. I try to find trends and how to spot, different parts of your draft, what to look for at each position. And for late round tight ends, there's 2 things that stand out. One of them is previous season ADOT. So how far they were seeing looks down the field. The bigger the ADOT generally, the better predictor it is for a breakout season. And then the other thing is slot usage. And Terence Ferguson last year doubled up every other Rams tight end in terms of slot usage. And his ADOT was 17.9 yards, which is beyond insane for any player, let alone a tight end. I mean, it was like 6 yards higher than any other tight end in football. So I see Terence Ferguson as this chess piece. Usually you want a tight end who's going to be a top 2 option in their offense. And obviously Terence Ferguson without injury would not be that. But I think this is a unique circumstance where the Rams use so much 12 and 13 personnel now based on what we saw last year. And they don't have a slot player at all that's reliable. So I think Terence Ferguson can kind of step in, play that role, be a legit red zone threat. There's just a lot to like about his athletic profile, his size profile, the situation he's in. And I think that he could walk into like a 15, 16% target share. And if there's room for growth there with contingent upside to injury or them just wanting to deploy him a little bit more in the red zone.
Interesting selection too if you're in deeper leagues and you miss out on do you want to talk about free 99? He's going after Chigakonkwo, he's going after AJ Barner, TJ Hawkinson, like he is the tight end 26 right now in terms of ADP. So he is out there, he is free 99. So if you miss out on tight end, even in a sharp league, and you want to take another stab with like a last round pick, it's certainly you make a really good excuse for it, or should I say not excuse, reasoning for it. And the other thing too about McVay. What I love about Sean McVay offense is his ability to find mismatches in coverage, right? So when you have a guy like Ferguson who goes from all of a sudden, inside to then moving to the outside and all of a sudden becomes a receiver, it's one thing to line him up and he's got, potentially a linebacker trying to cover him. It's another thing when you have a corner trying to cover him.
Right.
That is a very impossible task for the corners to tackle tight ends and guys of that size typically. And they typically don't want a piece of those kind of guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, one of my bold predictions this year, so I have a bold predictions piece coming out next week and I'll do an episode on it, is I think that Terence Ferguson will be the best tight end with the last name Ferguson this year.
Man, that is good stuff right there. You can't get that anywhere else.
That's what I'm saying.
You can, at least Next week you have to wait for
Next
it,
week.
but
Next
I
week.
do like that.
Yes.
All right, so we had all the must-haves. Just out of curiosity, I know we didn't prepare for this, but I know you have an answer for it. Who's the guy that you're avoiding and you faded the most this year? Because there's got to be somebody
man.
JJ hates.
Okay, I'll give you one.
And like context in ADP.
Yeah, of
You
course,
just
of
don't
course.
like the player or whatever it is.
I'll-
You don't like where he's going. You can't invest in him. Why?
I have not drafted. I mean, I have in best ball a little bit, sprinkled him in because he's a good player. But Trey McBride, I'm very nervous about this year. Obviously, you're taking on a big opportunity cost in the early rounds to get a tight end that early. To me, he just like Brock Bowers is just so easily in a higher tier than McBride, and there's just not significant enough of a gap between the two. But get this: last year, Trey McBride ran 120 more routes than any other tight end. Okay. If you look at his fantasy points per route run rate and you just bring him back down to earth, right, to still being tied as number one in the league in routes run at tight end, he would have lost 3.6 PPR points per game from his totals, which would still have given him like a 15.4-ish or something like that, like fantasy season points per game, which is good, but it's certainly not the elite season that we saw from him last year. He's a regression candidate from an end zone target perspective. The Cardinals threw the ball. And the reason why you can regress some of those routes is because the Cardinals threw the ball more than any other team in football last year. It's generally a number that regresses year over year. They do have a tough schedule this year, so they should be still pretty pass heavy, but there's just a lot to take on. Like, I think McBride belongs closer to Colston Loveland than he does Brock Bowers. And you'll see the two, you'll see oftentimes, especially in home leagues and stuff, you'll see McBride go closer to Bowers. And I think that's just wrong.
Amazing stuff, as always, my friend.
Thank you.
Of course, you should go check out Late Round Fantasy. You should check out the podcast. You check out the draft guide, all the stuff that JJ is doing. He is one of the great minds in fantasy football, and I have known him for almost 15 years because that's how long it's been since I think we had worked together. So
yeah,
kind of came around the same time in terms of like kind of breaking through in this injury. I started a little bit before you.
Yeah.
But you were always smarter and better looking.
Oh,
so
stop.
You obviously moved further.
I will say I've had more hair. I'll say that.
I could also say that. My bald head is old enough to drink now. Isn't that fun? Fun fact, 21 years.
Wow, look at you. Wow.
That's right.
Congratulations.
You know what the good part is? I look the same.
Yeah.
So you'll start losing more.
I know, that's right.
player.
That's
Me,
right. Go great.
Paul
You don't
Rudd, fantasy
age.
Football right here.
Yeah.
Doesn't change here at all. But
Yeah.
seriously, I love picking brains of people who, do such impeccable work. And you've always been one of those people. And you continue to be, in my opinion, one of the standard bearers of the data world in terms of fantasy football because you apply it very well. And I love it. It's not just about the data. It's the application process too and making it understandable. And that's what I love the most. And that's why I love that you made some time for us here on the new channel to hang out with us and give us some of that brilliant stuff there. Again, go check him out. Obviously, you know JJ very well over the years. And of course, make sure you check out RotoWire 2, 20% off, promo code Joey P. Use it. Don't be a tool. Use the tools for your draft, for your trades, for your waivers, for your lineup, for everything over at rotowire.com. Use tools from this century, the ones that are built now, okay? That's what you want to use. And of course, don't forget also, we got a giveaway as well. Marshall Faulk jersey, signed by Marshall Faulk. Could be yours when we have 5,000 subscribers. All you got to do is subscribe to the channel, drop your comments below, ring the bell till it goes ding, like this video, hype this video. Easy things to do. Good stuff there. JJ, awesome to talk to you, my friend. Good luck with all your teams, all your many, many, many teams. What I'm gathering too as well. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Uncle JJ, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, everybody. This has been Fandom NFL.